dancing. I guess I don't really get paid to dance. So how is everybody? As we learned from Pam Kaufman last week, who was or is the president of Viacom CBS in Global Consumer Products. And what she does in the beginning of every meeting, she doesn't dance, but she asks everybody, how are you? So let us all take a deep breath and just think about how you are. And it's okay if you're not good, because many of us aren't. But hopefully for these 15 minutes to an hour, we'll be able to enjoy ourselves and learn and be inspired. So I am going to share the screen as always. Where is the Google Chrome? That's not good. Hold on. Give me a sec. We're all learning. We're all in this together. Here we are. So the only thing, who's talking? Anyway, I guess I have to put you on mute. We're going to do that right now. Mute all. There we go. Okay, well, welcome to Culture Class. My name is Brad Grossman, and for those of you who don't know me, I am the founder and CEO of ZeitGuide. You know what? I feel too low in this chair. I'm going to have to get a pillow. I'm in a new room today. I got myself a booster in this room. All right, how's that? All right, my name is Brad Grossman. I'm the CEO and founder of ZeitGuide. Basically, I do exactly what this page does, so I'm not going to get into it again. And I've been doing Culture Class for the last year. I've had my company for the last decade. I've been working one-on-one and with teams and organizations to help them stay culturally relevant and tell them or help them understand how our constantly changing culture is shaping the world and therefore should shape their future strategies. And I had two Culture Class products that was able to scale my thinking and my teaching to more people. And I've been doing it on Zoom video for actually a year and a half. And many of you who have been on my Culture Class are here. So I'm so excited that you're on. And now, since the beginning of, I guess, our Corona culture, about 6 weeks ago, this is our 6th Culture Class. I've been doing it for free to help us all stay inspired together, building this community, and I'm grateful that you are all on. So let's get started. Oh, by the way, happy Earth Day. If there is one thing that we should be happy about, is that pollution or carbon emissions are analyzed by scientists to drop by 5.5% because of what's happening right now. Now, we have a lot of work to do because it should be over 7% if we're going to, actualize what we've been doing with or saying about the way to reverse climate change, according to the scientists. But let's just be happy about that. So happy Earth Day. And let's go to our agenda today. And by the way, this was yesterday's class, so we're going to basically just not look at the date. But the ZeitGuide's Pillars of Change, as you know, my thesis is that everybody here is a cultural leader. For the last 10 years, you may have been thought leaders. That culture is over. Stop thinking. Stop going on stages. And unfortunately, right now, we can't go on stages. But now it's time for us to actually step up and do things and be cultural leaders. And if you're going to be a cultural leader today, my thesis is that you can't just know about your job. You can't just know about your industry. You need to understand the world around you. And when I'm looking at the entire world of ideas, I separate them into 4 big buckets of change: global trends, tech trends, consumer trends, and workplace trends. And in terms of today's agenda, let's test and learn right there and put 22. I'm gonna talk about, in the global bucket, the context of where we are, and I've been talking about this from the beginning, on the Corona cultural narrative. Then we're gonna go into the tech bucket, And the theme there is going to be big tech, big love. Then we're going to go into the consumer bucket, and we're going to talk about the branding narrative. We've been talking about how do we connect with our consumers as brands, as retailers, connecting if we're B2B to our customers. I'm going to talk about where we are right now. And then I'm going to talk about my thesis about how we're at a point of what I'm calling the consumerization of celebrity and pop culture. And we are also going to have our Hearts and Minds segment. You know, every week I have an industry leader who comes on to talk about what they're going through and what they're thinking in their area of expertise. We had DJ Peterson, the geopolitical expert. We had Pam Kaufman last week, who I said is the president of Global Consumer Products of ICOM CBS. We had Michael Nyman, a marketing expert and veteran. We had Miriam Bonikaram, the CMO of Nextdoor. We had Sarah Wilson, who is a scholar, wrote for Harvard Business Review on digital platforms or digital campfires. And we had Piers Falk, who was the head of the Retail Global Innovation Week. And we're here now talking about the future of work, the future of the job market, with somebody I just met. And I'm so glad I met her. In fact, I'm going to call you afterward and figure out my future. I'm just kidding. Is Jana Rich, who is the founder of the Rich Talent Group. Jana, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Both Miriam and Pam are dear friends of mine, and I'm glad to call Brad one of my newest friends. So thank you for having me here today.
Oh my God, I'm blessed. And by the way, even though WeWork's going out of business, I'm wearing this in honor of the future of work, which we could talk about. This is a relic of the past, I guess, right? This and my LAX to JFK shirt. So unfortunately, I'm laughing, but it's, you know what I'm saying. We need to laugh right now, I'm hoping. So let's kind of move on, Jana. I'm not sure what part of the show we're going to have you on, but it's going to be at the right moment. And at the end, we're going to have a Q&A. Feel free to ask me anything or Jana, just put it in the chat and let's get going. So the first part is the global part. And I've been talking about this since the cultural narrative and the journey we've been on. Week one, for the first culture class, we're talking about shock and denial. Denial, the first stage of grief. Of course, my one-year-old niece is like crying like crazy downstairs, but I'll try to be focused. Week two, it has been all about influencers, celebrities, or employers helping us understand the concept of social distancing, hand washing. We saw a lot of fun of celebrities and influencers. I keep talking about the Chrissy Teigen example where she and John Legend are talking about how everybody is going to be making babies right now, but that's actually not true. Third week was the make or break week. It seems like that tone of having fun, being self-quarantine and being like, what the F? Many people like Lizzo, who I played in the beginning and danced to like a fool, was basically doing social media to really honor our heroes, especially people who are working in the medical community. And it was a make or break week because April, the beginning was we had to pay our rent, we had to make our mortgages, and actually next week, we're gonna have to be thinking about the same thing. Week four, Surgeon General said the worst week since Pearl Harbor. Last week, we talked about the road to the new normalcy or the new anxiety, because like, yes, we might be getting adjusted to how we're living, but what is it gonna be moving forward? Like what's life, what's normalcy, and how do we connect? Do we have our jobs? You know, are my kids going to school? Do I have to pay for college? All that stuff. And then week six, I'm calling The Tale of Two Cities, in the same way that Charles Dickens wrote that book. And we have two polarizations, or a polarization between two camps of thinking. I'm not really going to go deep on this because you could watch it on any news or read it in the New York Times. Again, my role here isn't to break down the breaking news or talk about that. You could get depressed at 7 o'clock every night, but is to help you step back and think about where we are and where we're going culturally. So I guess I have to put everybody on mute again. I'm sorry. Mute all. There you go. Sorry, muted you, whoever's talking. So yeah, there's a polarization here. So we have.
With the savings rates offered at some banks, your money almost feels like it's frozen.
We have Fauci basically saying that for us to go back to normalcy and open up the economy, we need 20 million tests a day, right? That's on one side. Like, we should not go out there yet. We're not ready. We only have 3.7 million tests per day, maybe 4 million at this point. So we have that side. Then we have the Georgia governor who wants us to open up everything, even movie theaters. I guess it's the same governor who basically wanted to reverse abortion rights. But like, look at that polarization in America. I'm just talking about America right now. We'll get to the rest of globalization or global examples. Nevada, they want to open it up literally by the 15th, where everybody could stay in an air-trapped place with no ventilation and cigarettes everywhere, and everybody breathing on top of each other while they gamble. To be perfectly honest, there was a study that said that, sorry, where did this go? Sorry. Okay, 6 out of 10 in this survey in the Wall Street Journal NBC News poll basically said that they were concerned that the country is moving too fast. Here's the data. And what's interesting right now is that there are Republicans who feel like that they don't want to go back to normalcy either. So that's on a consumer citizen level. If you want to look globally, this is what it's looking like in China, where they are actually going back. Obviously, there's no social distancing there, and everybody is wearing a mask. And if you want to see how they're going back to work, look at this. So, if you're scared about going back to get some beauty done, I guess you should learn by the Chinese. Anyway, there was a really nice piece yesterday that the New York Times is actually trying to help us think more positively. And, there is a chance for us to come together. Cuomo actually had a beautiful speech the other day about how we should step back and think about all the things that we are grateful for, which is really hard. So I completely understand. I'm having a tough time too. I know everybody is right now. Yeah. Oh, by the way, if you want to share any thoughts, please talk about it with the community as well in the chat. I actually before, and I think I've told many of you before, is that I wrote a piece for the Business of Fashion with my friend Dan Mitchell. And even before this moment, the world sucked. We actually said the world is on fire, and that the only way that we can kind of reverse where we're going culturally is to kind of reboot humanity. And this is definitely a catalyst. It's a magnifier of all the shit that is wrong with our world, our country, et cetera. I know there are people here from other countries, but I guess I'm American and talking about from that perspective. And, this is a magnifier of everything going on in the world that sucks, and a catalyst, hopefully, for everything that we could continue in terms of moving forward. So let's talk about a little bit of positive news. Let's go to the second bucket, tech. Big tech, big love. Now, I don't know if you know about this, but Facebook has a new emoji. They used to be called emoticons, right? But emoji about, really hugging each other and giving people like love and heart during this time of crisis. And, it's interesting to me, and Jana, I know many of your clients, and you'll talk about this, are in the tech world. Advertising. I guess they really have to figure out how to make money. Sorry about that. So there is a survey right now that 9 in 10, it actually was released a couple days ago by the National Research Group, a global insights firm. And this new study, whereas like Gallup before the coronavirus said that 60% of Americans believe that major tech companies were horrible for society. There were privacy hacks, misinformation, caused addiction, high suicide rates in teenagers because of their addiction to social media and their FOMO. And now it's 88% of Americans who are surveyed say that they better appreciate it right now. It's technology that's putting us all together, which is a beautiful thing. In some way. Of course, it's not as good as real contact, but we are learning that we can still conduct our lives with Zoom or technology. We could all come together. So that's an interesting development, I think. And I'm going to talk about that again when we go to the Marinica report, which is also a big thing in tech. So like if we're talking about the reversal in sentiment of big tech, I've said this before, Scott Galloway, of L2 and is on a podcast with Kara Swisher called Pivot, has been saying that Sheryl Sandberg and Mark Zuckerberg or Facebook should go to jail. And, Facebook is just as bad as Chevron. And so, there was a lot of negative sentiment, like I said, 60%. But now, I would say out of the 5 big tech companies, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, and Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, and Google. The only one that we think is a horrible company right now is Amazon. Yes, I just got my essential goods within a couple days, but, I can't get my toilet paper. What am I supposed to do, Amazon? Come on, get with it. But we all see all the stories of the treatment with workers and blah, blah, blah. But the other ones, wow, look how well what they're doing to really contribute positivity to the world. Stepping back for a second, if we look at the 1918 Spanish flu, we're not supposed to call it the Spanish flu, but you know what I'm saying, or epidemic or pandemic, sorry. One of the things that really is going to help us right now is all the digital technology that's going to help us, track and help us get data for us to fix this problem, pharmaceutical technology. So we do have technology and we're going to use it positively. Facebook will expand its symptom tracking. Mark Zuckerberg basically wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post yesterday, talking about how their data is going to help with the response. The founders of Instagram are creating this R2 algorithm to show how the virus is spreading in every state and area. There was a piece, if we have time, I might show it at the end, in CBS Sunday Morning that talked about, which we talked about last week, because that was in the zeitgeist last week, but it's really hard to understand what it is. In fact, I will put it in the chat because it's worth seeing. Everyone. There we go. Everyone in meeting. That really explains, well, first of all, Apple and Google come together to do this thing, which is unheard of. But David Pogue in CBS Sunday Morning explains how it works. You know what? Let's just do it for 2 seconds.
What is this big project? It's a little technical, so let's take this slowly. You've heard of Bluetooth, right? It's a weak radio signal that lets your phone send music to wireless headphones or music to your car's stereo. Very soon, iPhones and Android phones will continuously broadcast a Bluetooth beacon, basically a big number that changes every few minutes, to any phones within about 15 feet. Meanwhile, of course, your phone is picking up the beacons from all other phones nearby. It remembers these interactions for 14 days. Now, here's the cool part. Suppose that a few days later, this guy tests positive for COVID-19. If he's willing, he can report his diagnosis in an app from a public health agency. At that point, everybody he's exposed in the last 2 weeks gets notified on their phones and advised to seek testing or quarantine. And to be clear...
All right, so that's pretty cool. So if you don't understand that, I gave you the link in chat. Again, I'm going to have to mute you all, whoever's typing right now. Why doesn't that continue, Zoom? Maybe I don't like technology. Anyway, so Mary Meeker actually just came out with the Corona Report. She launches every year Recode, basically the trends of the year of technology. She originally is from Kleiner Perkins, and now she has her own VC firm called Bond Capital. Complete genius. She in the world of technology, media, marketing, healthcare, anybody in the startup world and legacy business world relies on her to tell us what we need to know. And she's very optimistic about what's going to happen in terms of the technological world. She did this privately, or gave Axios the ability to show this to everybody before anybody else. And I would say the takeaway is that we are going to see, and this is a good time, Jana, for us to pivot to you, Jana, because I know so many of your clients are in the technology world. Mary is basically saying that this is going to be a catalyst for technological innovation. And it's a good thing that 88% of those polls that I just showed think of technology favorably. And the other thing is she's talking about how technology is going to transform healthcare, which we understand now it sucks, and the way that we work in a much more forward-moving, catalyzed, wow, we can't believe this is happening so quickly way. So I would say that that is the takeaway of her report, but of course it's a 28-page report. I'll put it in the chat as well while we introduce Jana Rich right now. Where's Jana?
I should be here, Brad. Can you see me?
I can't. Well, let's stop share. Let's do that so we can see. There you are.
Hello. The one in the sparkly purple.
Wow. So you're trying to get us all excited and motivated too. So thanks for being here, Jana. I know you're so busy right now and always. I'm so blessed that I was introduced to you. And the reason why is because, you're truly an innovator. So, traditionally people will call you a headhunter or an executive placement firm. You have been in this career for a while. You started your career at such legacy executive placement firms like Korn Ferry and Russell Reynolds. And after a while, we saw this opportunity in Silicon Valley to work with startups and help them find amazing talent. And you have your own firm now in San Francisco. And you're still working with like the legacy companies that need to hire because they want more innovative thinkers and diverse. I've been reading a lot about you. You're really a proponent of diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So I am happy that you're here. Maybe you could tell us before we begin who some of your clients are.
Sure.
Do you mind?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here. And I'll say a couple of things. When we started 6 years ago, we said, you're going to know us for two things. One is digital and the other is diversity, because we always wanted to remain kind of a small and focused firm. What we were doing in the very beginning was working with companies like Airbnb, Pinterest, Warby Parker, Uber, and a lot of those had some similarities in terms of size and stage and kind of growth trajectory. What is interesting 6 years later is those two things are still true, but it's all about how you define your business, because when you say digital, that can apply to companies like Nike, Hilton, SAP, Adobe. All of those have become clients of ours as well. We weren't necessarily anticipating working with the Fortune 100, 200, Fortune 500, whatever. But when they want digital DNA, when they want diverse leadership teams, those two things are really why people want to work with us.
Awesome. Well, it's really interesting that you are a leader and innovator of yourself, and you've seen this white space, which right now, I'm sure one of the things that we have to think about is like, what will be the opportunity set? The financial crisis gave startup entrepreneurs the opportunity to create that culture. So like what's next is something interesting that, that I've been thinking about as well. Can I just say like one little piece of gossip? Is it true? I heard your NPR piece, and are you like really good friends with Sheryl Sandberg?
Yeah, it's actually true. I don't know. I hate the whole sort of name dropper thing.
Of course. But,
I
you
met
know.
Cheryl in, goodness, it probably would have been, I'm losing track of time here, 2001-ish. She was still in DC. This is before she had joined Google. It's actually a funny, quick sidebar story, which I don't think is in there. But at the time, back in 2001, we were doing a CFO search for Google. Larry and Sergey were still the co-founders. Eric Schmidt was not there yet. So they didn't have their CEO yet. And that's a really difficult time, by the way, to do a CFO search. And so we got down to 2 finalists, and the board said, we think we're getting close on the CEO search, so just pause for a minute. And in that pause for a minute moment, Larry and Sergey introduced me to Cheryl, who was working for Larry Summers in DC at the time, and said, well, since the CFO search is on hold, we know she's not a CFO, but meet her because we think she could be really interesting here. Did so, absolutely thought Cheryl was phenomenal, and said, you're right, she's definitely not a CFO, but she would be a phenomenal addition to Google. So that's literally how it started, and we've worked together at both Google and Facebook.
Okay, right. I forgot she was in Google. Well, I think she's really stepping up right now. I mean, even in the second week of the cultural narrative that I talked about with the influencers teaching us about social distancing, like she had this beautiful fun little piece where she was washing her hands and teaching us how to wash our hands with her husband. And, you know, I mean, they had a lot of scrutiny and a lot of problems against them, and like they're really showing they're showing up, Facebook. So let's go back. Sorry, you were gonna say something?
I was just gonna say the book Option B that she did with Adam Grant. What's interesting, if people haven't seen it, there's elements of Option B. Like, let's be honest, we are all dealing with Option B right now in all of our professional and personal lives. And it was really cool to see sort of an addendum that some of the themes in that book apply to what we're going through today. Anyway.
So like, what would be the takeaway of that book, would you say?
Basically, the concept, if people haven't read it, around Option B was after the death of her husband, Dave Goldberg.
Right.
Basically, the concept being when you are dealt a set of cards, which is not anyone's option A, is how to sort of lean into Option B and make it the best it could possibly be. And it's funny, I had thought about it a little bit, and then she and Adam have been on various forms of social media saying, we're going to create an addendum to the book because several of these themes are not just about a spouse dying, but it's actually about all of us dealing with less than ideal circumstances.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's talk about the less than ideal circumstances right now, which I know everybody, wants to hear from you, because many of us on this call actually have been laid off or furloughed, right? Are having trouble working and balancing, and really are scared of it. Or many of us are, employers and bosses. We're not getting our checks. We don't know if we're even going to be relevant or survive. And so you're the expert. Can you tell me about where's the job market right now? What do we really have to know?
Yeah, let me just start out first of all with just saying to everybody who's, dialed in today, I think this is a difficult and challenging time. And even if we're in jobs and gainfully employed, it's still a difficult time. I think none of us know exactly how to navigate these waters. But the good news is, just like with the coronavirus, we are not in this alone. And so I certainly want to try to do everything I can today and going forward to be kind of a helpful voice. I'll start with just real talk, because I think the way you establish credibility with anyone is that you're willing to speak the truth, right? And as all of us know, the employment market is not strong. And unfortunately, the message I would say, just to start this out, is I actually think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I do think you've got several companies who decided to address it early, maybe even to cut slightly deeper than they thought they needed to, but that is by no means not the case with all companies. You're going to continue to see companies who haven't really dealt with the reality of it yet, and it's going to come, I think, in sort of continuous waves. The other interesting just side note I would say is I've seen 2 downturns before throughout my recruiting career, and I genuinely think this is going to be the worst. So 2001, dot-com bust, 2008, much more broad in terms of various industries being impacted. This is one, and again, I'm not trying to be negative, but this is one where no one comes out unscathed, right? I mean, that's just the reality of it. There are certainly going to be companies that will thrive and grow, and sectors that will be majorly innovated and all that kind of great stuff. There are definitely going to be upsides, but for everyone, this is a, how do we right size this for the economy that we're in today?
Mm-hmm. So if that's the truth, which it probably is, well, you know what? Let me step back. So what are your clients saying to you? Are you getting calls from anybody saying like, we're not hiring? I even read somewhere, and I don't know if this is appropriate for you, that, executive recruiters or talent recruiters who are in retainer are actually getting furloughed right now too. So when you're speaking to your clients, are any of them asking to fill up some jobs? And what are the ones that they're not filling up, I guess?
It's a real mixed bag, is the honest to God truth about the whole storyline. So there are a few searches for companies that have really struggled where they've asked to put the searches on hold or cancel, one or the other, right? Interestingly enough, it's an interesting sort of, I'll call it leaky bucket, because while some things are going away, there are several new projects that are launching. And it's a wide range of different things, but I'll give you a couple examples. Gaming is particularly hot right now. Anything that has to do with sort of virtual reality, if it has to do with virtual concerts, for example, anything that we would kind of encapsulate under gaming, we've seen a lot of new projects launch in that arena. Anything that you might consider to be biotech, which hasn't historically been necessarily a big area of expertise for us, but when you think about technology, digital innovation, a lot of that's happening in telemedicine, biotech, et cetera. So
like Mary Meeker just said.
Exactly. There's one biotech company that had raised $500 million right before COVID happened, and they have to build an entire team. So there are absolutely going to be pockets of growth, but it is, I really do mean it, I think it's that leaky bucket, right? You continue to see companies that will struggle, that will put recruiting on hold or pause, and there are other companies, you got to find those moments in those places where growth is happening.
Huh. And you were telling me about this cool company, Wave or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, wait, tell me about that.
Yeah, so if people haven't heard of it, I hadn't before. Wave, and it's funny, it's a play off a rave, but this is with Wave AW. The concept behind this is virtual concerts. So you get the artist in studio where there's great quality sound, because I think that's one of the issues, is you want to hear them in their best possible light, but the entire concert goers are virtual. And
but better than Zoom, basically.
Exactly. They've just signed artists like John Legend and several others. I mean, they're going to be on a tear because they're very much, and I mean this with great respect, right place, right time. Who knew even a month or two ago that this would be such a hot area of growth?
So those are the people who are calling you right now. Who's not calling you anymore or called you before a lot? Not names, like industries.
Yeah. I mean, you can imagine, right? I mean, companies, for example, that are in anything to do with live events, right? Anything having to do with that, anything to do with hospitality, right? If you think about airlines, hotels, obviously we've all read about Airbnb. I mean, there's a whole host of, I think, pretty obvious sectors that are really struggling right now. But, conversely, who is growing besides the gaming space, healthcare we just talked about, even things, for example, like online bill payments, right? That's anything where everything you're doing is digitally enabled. Think of companies like PayPal and all of the newer incarnations of something like that. Even credit card companies. I mean, some legacy businesses are also interesting enough doing well if they can transition that business into largely digital first transactions.
What about like the big ones like Google? Are they hiring right now, or?
I don't know if people saw this. So it was last Thursday, which I'll be honest, I was even a bit surprised by, where Google talked about slowing down and maybe only doing sort of, I'll call it critical hires. And the reason they cited was not necessarily economic, although let's be honest, that is a factor for sure. But what they talked about was their concern about the importance of culture. And they were not too keen on the idea of onboarding people virtually, that if you really wanted to keep that culture strong and robust, you needed to pause or slow down hiring in the hopes that you could then onboard people in person. And again, I'll just say I was surprised by that. It was definitely a bit of a sobering moment, because I didn't expect Google, that is large, that's in a lot of diversified businesses, Google, that's a company where you think of technology, they might be the first, you would think in theory, to say, sure, we can onboard people virtually. But if they start to, I don't know, infiltrate other companies, I worry a little bit that then everyone will say, oh, I guess you can onboard people virtually. I think what we need to be challenged by is we may have to do so. And how do we create awesome ways to do that? I'll give you just a quick sidebar. There's another big legacy tech company who the candidate was concerned because they hadn't, met people in person and was reluctant to accept the offer. Mm-hmm. This person lives about 10 minutes away from the campus. And so it's probably a silly thing in a way, but like I love the creative moments here. She said, I'll meet you. I'll have masks on. I'll stay 6 feet away from you, but it's empty. The campus is empty. So I can at least walk you through for you to visualize some of the spaces that you might work in, if you were to accept our offer. I thought that's sort of creative. Again, like we can't.
Well, that's where I wanted to. That's where I wanted to go. So I know many of us on this call, because many of my clients are like creative thinkers. Most of my clients are media, entertainment, consumer-facing businesses, retail, marketing, and so like for us creatives, like how should we think? I mean, like I don't want to for me, like being a technologist is like being a plumber. I mean, I not that nothing affects the plumbers. It's like, I like I'm cringing by the fact that like those are the only jobs that could be available.
Depends, I think, on even what we define as technology. Because just to be clear, I'm a little bit like Brad on this one. Like we do not do searches for engineers, CTOs, CIOs. That is not our area of expertise. Okay. Like more of the go-to-market side of things, the quote-unquote business side of things. But when you think about digital transformation, I think what's interesting is people will think of, oh, that's the CTO or the CIO or the head of engineering, or that's a technology platform solve. And some of it is, but honestly, a whole bunch of that is really, what's the overall business strategy? What's the go-to-market strategy? How well do you know your consumers and where they want to be met and how they want to be met? So there's a whole bunch of that digital transformation work that doesn't sit in quote-unquote IT.
Okay. So it's kind of like technology is everything right now. It's like it's just a natural resource that kind of oozes into every discipline. So you just kind of have to know how to work with those type of people. All right. So let's get some advice if you don't mind. So what do we do now that like we're all going to get fired? I'm sorry. I'm laughing. I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh. It's a serious thing. But what do we do? What should we be doing right now?
Let's try to bucket it a little bit, because I think there's different levels of impact. I'm going to guess there's probably, I'm making a wild guess here, but I'm going to guess the majority of people on this call are still in jobs, but are probably a bit nervous, right? So there's that group. There's people who might be, for example, asked to go more part-time or take a cut in salary. There may be some people who are furloughed. I mean, I do think there's different dynamics at play here. And yes, some people who are out of work right now. It's a broad spectrum. So I'll try to parse it. We could obviously probably go on for hours if we were to go through each one of those scenarios. But at the highest level, if you're in jobs today, but you're nervous, which by the way, I think would apply to probably a lot of people. Totally. Try to do the best you can in that state of being a bit nervous and concerned to give it your all. I mean, we talk a lot about this concept of ownership mentality. I mean, literally pretend it were your company. And if you're looking at how could you continue to raise your hand and contribute, even if you saw, look, there really are needs in X area of my company. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I'm going to raise my hand to say, I can go get smart on that. I can help. It's that moment where I think when we're fearful, we can either pull back or we can lean in. And the most important thing I can say is not only will it help save your job, it'll help your company continue to thrive and grow if you use this as a moment to really, really lean in. So that's one point as it relates to people who are in jobs today.
And like really think about, because so many of my, people I know, they were miserable before, right? And, this was actually something like, okay, like I couldn't quit myself, but now, it's really time for me to figure out what I want to do next. So I think we use this self-reflection time a little bit. And I think you were telling me some of the things we can be doing is like, editing or developing our LinkedIn profiles, connecting with clients or people and just to check in and see how they are without any agenda, right? I think we were talking a little bit about that. So are there any other things that we could be doing right now?
And let's talk even just a little bit specifically about those couple of examples that Brad just mentioned, right? If you think about your LinkedIn profile, it feels like the vast majority of those are title, company, time frame, and that's about it, right? What would it look like to really enhance that LinkedIn profile? Meaning you're actually adding things in there. What did you accomplish? And by the way, the more specific, the better. The more where you have actual metrics for performance, the better, but putting some of that in there. If you want to add in some special skills towards the end, right? Other areas that people might not anticipate that you could be good at. Some people forget to put not-for-profit boards or even public company boards, private company boards, like all of that stuff belongs on there. So take a little time to spruce it up. Mm-hmm. If you do have time on your hands, whether that means you're employed, partially employed, unemployed, but if you have time on your hands, really use this as a time to learn, right? There's a lot of different free online courses. If you look at things, for example, this just got announced, I think, the last couple of days, both Salesforce and Adobe, their big national conference, which you spend money going to, you spend money flying to, they've made it free. So there are a lot of...
Obviously you can't go right now either, so because it's an event, right?
But because so many of these things are virtual, they'll either come at low cost or no cost, and there's a lot of opportunities to find different venues online where you can learn a lot. And Brad also mentioned something else important. Let's pretend, I'll just use this hypothetically, pretend I was really passionate about healthcare, telemedicine, the consumerization of healthcare. And I knew 3 people who worked in that area. Now, granted, they're busy right now. But if I said, can I spend 15 or 30 minutes on a phone call with you to really help myself get smart because my company needs me or the industry needs me or something, people will make time for you right now. And I think it's both because they have more time maybe than usual, most people. But even if they didn't, there's definitely a spirit right now of trying to help lift others up. I know several people who are out of work right now are pleasantly surprised that people are willing to give them the time, because I do think there's a different degree of empathy coming out of this moment.
Yeah.
Than in the past.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I am sure. Well, okay, one last question. What happens if you're on the other side? You're an employer, right? And you're scared that you're going to need to fire or furlough. How can you step up as a good leader right now? And also, how can you deal with your own fears and insecurities and all that?
It's a great question. I mean, what a great time to practice things like over communication, transparency, and communicating more frequently and maybe in smaller doses, right? I mean, for example, we make sure that our teams together on a Zoom 3 different times a week. And we are updating constantly, what our pipeline of business looks like. If a client were to cancel, for example, everyone knows that immediately. Like, I think the one way you get both yourself and the rest of the team feeling as comfortable as possible, and there's no such thing exactly as comfortable right now, but is as much information as you can possibly share. Because, oh, by the way, the more you share, the more your team also knows the health of the business, where you might need help. It's definitely a team sport right now. So the more that you can bring people in under that umbrella and kimono, the better.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We're going to have time for the last few minutes for questions. I'm just going to go through the other 2 buckets. Actually, I think this is a good time to go into the consumer stuff. So we already did global, we did tech, now we did work, and we're going to share the screen again. And I would love to talk a little bit about the consumerization of pop culture. And I guess this is a good time for all of us who are creatives, and just know that, here we go, sorry. Just know that at this time, we do have an opportunity to work with tech as creatives. I'm calling it the consumerization of pop culture and entertainment, because in the same way that you use, Jana, the consumerization of healthcare, use that term, I've been talking about the consumerization of the workplace for the last 10 years. And that's really just all about, if you're going to be a relevant workplace, pre-corona. You have to treat your employees as if they're consumers. So if I could get something with the click of a button on a cell phone, and it takes me 3 seconds to get it, and it takes me 6 months to negotiate a deal, there's an inconsistency. So I've been talking about the consumerization of the workplace. How can the work reflect what's happening in terms of consumerism? And when it comes to pop culture, what I've been thinking about is that pop culture, entertainments, movie stars, everything has been shaping consumers forever, pre-digital technology. We wanted to be like Harrison Ford or Gwyneth Paltrow or whomever. Now, the consumers have more power than ever before because the legacy companies and the media companies and the advertisers were actually listening to what consumers want. And now we have, people literally celebrities basically doing exactly what we're doing as consumers and workers. Like we're on Zoom video right now. And you even saw it in Sesame Street, which is amazing, the Elmo social distancing. See, like the entertainment is reflecting how we are conducting ourselves as consumers. And then you were talking a little bit about, creative people and that company called Wave using digital technology. Like many of these very powerful, influential celebrities, they may have explored with Instagram and promoting themselves, but now they are seeing technology as a way for them to advance their careers and finding new revenue streams. So you did talk about, and I actually think I found something while we were on the shared screen. This is Wave, literally. So you have these celebrities like John Krasinski of The Office using these digital platforms to be creative. And, as TubeFilter basically said, which I just showed, is that, old stars, their headline is "Forced Online is going to change Hollywood," right? So we are seeing that American Idol is going to be reinventing themselves now, where everybody is going to be performing at their own homes. There's that, how American Idol will live through the coronavirus. We have the example of MTV Unplugged, right? They're going to be doing home live stream. We have the example of Travis Scott, who's actually using Fortnite, right, which is the big gaming platform that everybody has been using. It's called Game as a Service. And, consumers aren't paying for the game, they're paying for the things within the game. So you have Travis Scott, which, by the way, Marshmello actually did this before, having a concert within Fortnite, and 10.7 million players were attending. There are other actual content platforms. Here's one called Stage It. If you're a fashion designer, there's a platform which is Fashion Meets Fortnite, where you could kind of use this digital technology to, create a fashion show. It's called Fabricant. And, on the other side, though, influencers who made their mark on social media and made a lot of money by doing YouTube videos or being influencers by brands. Brands are actually, because they are spending less money, are stepping away from influencers. And what are influencers actually doing right now? Well, there's this platform, if you didn't know, called Cameo, right? Where if you're an influencer, you could pay them directly to actually for them to sing happy birthday to one of your friends. Caitlyn Jenner is asking for $2,500. So you can see that, how celebrities are using digital technology. And before we go into Q&A, I just want to continue with the brand checklist we've been talking about since the beginning of time, about the following things that you must do as a brand today. And a lot of brands and retailers are stepping up to the plate. There's actually a list, which I'm going to put in the Zoom right now, not the Zoom, what is it called? The chat. Everyone, I don't know how to do this. Here we go. Which is from CNN's The Reliable Sources. And there's a link, and they have a huge Google Doc of all the brands that are doing great things, and like what are some of the things that they're contributing to the world. But it's kind of, the narrative has always been the same since the beginning. Like, don't oversell, show that you're really impactful and thinking about other people. You're not telling them to do things. And the ones that were basically thought as being very inappropriate and tasteless right now. So
this is an uncertain time for all of us. We wanted to use technology to help people, to create some certainty out there. Sending a sales email without acknowledging the current situation we're in is cold, insensitive. People aren't going to buy something from someone who acts completely oblivious to this uncertainty.
First I was like, what the fuck? And then I realized I was looking at something very powerful.
Uncertain Times browser extension is a software tool that automatically modifies your outgoing marketing emails to be sensitive to the climate that we're in and maximize sales.
I installed the extension to my browser, and it took care of adding the appropriate language to every email I send our customers and prospects. The Uncertain Times browser extension has been a real home run for us.
I'm Jim Trim, founder of OneManHaircut.com, the #1 seller of tools and educational resources for men who want to cut their own hair. My initial reaction was to start buying things.
We're essentially optimizing the uncertainty per email. We call this the uncertainty coefficient. Efficiency equals uncertainty times blast squared.
So, I signed up.
We've created a library of words you can use to get your message across in your email blast. Words like challenging, unpredictable, unusual, unsure, questionable. In these questionable times.
Then I sent a shit ton of sales emails with the cool new COVID-19 lingo. Razor sales went through the absolute fucking roof.
In these ambiguous times, confusing, unclear, unsettled, irregular, weird, erratic, precarious, irresolute. In these iffy times, undecided, vague, unresolved, risky, ambivalent. In these unreliable times, in these hesitant times, in these conjectural times, in these fitful times, in these incalculable times, dubious, indistinct, undetermined, insecure, inconclusive, speculative, up for grabs. In these chancy times, vacillating, touch and go, unforeseeable, hanging by a thread, on thin ice. In these on thin ice times. Try the Uncertain Times browser extension. Available now for Chrome and Firefox, and soon Safari.
So if you didn't get that, that was a spoof of how all these brands are trying to figure out how to communicate with their consumers. And it seems like there was a piece in the Wall Street Journal on Monday that actually mentioned that video about how the narrative needs to change. Like, 10%, there was a study, said that they wanted marketers to, when people were asked what they preferred in advertising during the pandemic, only 10% said they wanted marketers to acknowledge the situation or express concern. So I'm going to leave it on that, because that is the next step of where branding and advertising is going. We're all really confused. In fact, because many of us are in consumer-facing industries, it's also how do we connect with our customers if you're not in consumer-facing industries, B2B. And actually, the Telegraph is doing a survey right now to see what consumers really do want in terms of advertising, because all of us brands and retailers are very confused. So we have 6 minutes left. Wow, okay. So it's time for Q&A, right? But before we do that, I just wanted to get everybody excited for next week's Hearts and Minds special guests. And, oh, I didn't share the screen, so you can't see it. Sorry. All right. Is Franklin Leonard. We're having a Hollywood guy come in next week. And Franklin Leonard, he actually used to work with Will Smith as an executive, a development executive who made movies with him, and is the creator, which is a very interesting story, of the Blacklist, which was the list that he created of every script that had never been produced that has been amazing. And because of his list, 400 scripts on it actually had been produced into movies, earning 250 Academy Award nominations. He is also a producer and has a mission of creating films and other content with more diverse actors and filmmakers. And next week, he's going to talk to us about the future of movies. Really excited to have him on board. And so for the last few minutes, and obviously you can stay on, I don't know what Jana's time is, but Jana, are you still there?
I am still here.
All right, let's do some Q&A. What do you think? Oh, by the way, next Wednesday, 2 p.m., same time, same place. Spread the word. And let's go to Q&A. So I got some in chats here. Okay, from Jana Rich. Okay, so you're not going to ask yourself a question. Jana, do you see an acceleration of gig workers or freelance workers in this new environment?
The quick answer is we haven't seen it yet, but I do think it's coming. And why I say I think it's coming is you'll see sort of this wave that jobs will be eliminated and then companies are going to need people, but they may not be willing or ready yet to bring them on full time. So I do anticipate we're going to see a lot of really interesting and meaty, call them short-term consulting gigs at pretty senior levels even. And the nice part about that is I also would predict that several of those will turn into full-time roles. It's about, I need to fill this role, but I can't afford, or I'm nervous to commit to it fully. So will you come on this journey with me and we'll explore it a bit together? And when we talk about people, individuals who want to learn about new and different spaces, that's also kind of cool because you too get to kind of quote unquote try before you buy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And let's go to the next one. Everybody, send me your questions, please. All right, what about this? From Lisa Bernstein. Jana, can you tell us what you are seeing for summer internships and entry-level hiring for your clients? Lisa's interested to hear any creative ways in which clients are handling their future employees.
Well, just as a quick context setter, we work at the VP level on up. So I just want to at least mention that I'm not an expert necessarily in, call it, entry-level hiring, but just anecdotally, sadly, especially as it relates to summer interns, we've heard, I would say, a very significant proportion of those programs have been canceled for the summer. One interesting bright light, because we talked about Google earlier, probably people saw this, but Google has announced they are continuing with summer interns. They will be virtual. So it's sort of funny in that we talked about they're concerned about onboarding, but in the context of summer interns, they are going to move forward and have these individuals work from their homes, but still have meaty projects over the summer. So it would be nice to see more companies following their lead. Interesting. So maybe there's an opportunity. See, it's always looking at the white space, maybe like a virtual job fair or something like that. So, that's another thing I've been reading about, right? Like stepping up to do things that for the last 10 years, we've been talking about innovation. We need to transform the workplace. But again, I was talking about the last decade as the decade of the thought leadership, not cultural leadership. Stop talking, actually doing. And there have been so many innovation projects that have been on hold because of the way that corporations are structured, right? So maybe now is the time to step up, right? And do things that you either were doing before, but your boss put it on the back burner. Right now might be an interesting time to create some kind of technological platform for your company for recruitment. It's just an idea I got. No, I really true. It's like a forced innovation or forced flexibility, if you will, right? There's going to be a lot of different ways that companies in the past would have been yeah, no, great idea, Brad, but no, we're not going to do it. Versus today, bring it on, Brad. What is it? Let's think about it, because we have to think differently. Yeah. Okay. And the last question, it is 3:00. I have one for you to kind of pull it all together. How are we going to work in the future? And I mean, do we know? I mean, we're working very differently now. It's a great question. I think a lot of people will ask questions like, is remote work basically just going to be the mode of the future? And if you say that in the broadest way, I don't think so. No, I don't actually agree with that, because I think also what's happening here is a lot of people are missing the, I don't know, call it real-time collaboration, the coffee chats, if you will, in the office. So I do think once we're allowed back in the office, a lot of people are going to be glad to do so. But the most positive thing I think that will come out of this is flexibility. People will be allowed to work in different ways. Teams will be more effective at collaborating across different geographies. It'll be interesting, by the way, to see if companies are more flexible about hiring people who aren't in their geography. So right now I'm not talking about, I live in San Francisco and I work remotely from Marin County or something, but I'm going to join a San Francisco based company. I live in Denver and they're going to be okay with that. So it'll be interesting to see if those changes happen.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jana. Thank you everybody for coming. I can't even spell. That makes me actually unvaluable, I guess, right? But I guess you don't need to do that these days. You have spell check. So when you go home tonight, I have a little exercise for everybody to do. Thinking about, because this is a time for self-reflection, how do you want your work life to be in the future now? Your profession, industry, role, are you happy with that? How can some of your skills, maybe you don't want to be, the senior executive of marketing at, you wanted to do something else, but you don't have the career experience, but you have a particular type of skill set. Maybe you're great with people. Maybe you're good with managing. Maybe you're good at organization. Maybe you're creative. Maybe you understand technology, and how could those skills translate to other jobs of the future? How can your skills translate more as a boss? Are you a good boss? Are you a bad boss? I had lots of people tell me after Pam Kaufman was talking last week saying wow, Pam seems like an amazing boss who checks in. My boss is horrible. He or she had never done that to me. What kind of boss do you want? Do you feel like you should have more balance in your life? Should you work harder, or should you just be complacent with where you are? So I'm going to leave you with that. I love you all. Please tell other people to join this on the free culture class. Like I said I'm going to be doing it for the evolution, or how long we're going to be self-quarantined, to help inspire us all and help us stay smart and knowledgeable and ready for the future. And join me next week. Franklin Leonard, I know, is going to be awesome. And any questions, you could email me directly at brad@zeitguy.com. And have a great day. And like I always say, keep learning.